The stars outside the observation window looked cold and distant. Captain Park Do-hyun stood with his hands behind his back, watching as the massive space station grew larger. Nexus Prime. They called it the heart of the Galactic Council, a place where species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years gathered to decide the fate of younger civilizations. Humanity was one of those younger civilizations. They had discovered faster-than-light travel only 60 years ago. In galactic terms, they were babies taking their first steps. "Captain, we are cleared for docking," Lieutenant Kim Yuna said from her station. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. Before joining the space fleet, she had served in special forces. Her calm voice hid a warrior's instincts. "Take us in," Do-hyun replied. The UES Resolve moved smoothly toward the station. It was not the largest ship in the human fleet, but it was fast and well-armed. Do-hyun had chosen it specifically for this mission. Something in his gut told him they might need speed before this was over. In the corridor behind the bridge, Dr. Baek Suman checked her tablet one more time. She was the diplomatic attaché for this mission, a xenobiologist who had spent 20 years studying alien species. Her job was to smile, speak carefully, and make sure humanity did not offend anyone. "Nervous?" Sergeant Choi Minho asked. He was a big man with broad shoulders and scars on his hands. He led the small security team that would accompany the delegation. "Always," Suman admitted. "These species have been watching us since we first left Earth. Most of them think we are too aggressive, too emotional, too dangerous." Minho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Maybe they're right." Private Han Junho stood nearby, checking his weapon for the third time. He was the youngest member of the team, barely 25 years old. This was his first mission beyond human space. His hands were steady, but his eyes betrayed his excitement and fear. The Resolve docked without incident. The delegation assembled at the airlock. Do-hyun, Suman, Yuna, Minho, Junho, and 4 other security officers. 9 humans walking into a station filled with thousands of aliens who had conquered the stars while humanity was still learning to make fire. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. A delegation of aliens waited for them. Most were Volari, tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They wore black armor and carried weapons openly. Their eyes were cold and empty, like sharks. Leading them was a creature called High Arbiter Veln. He was ancient, his body supported by a floating chair that hummed with technology humans could not understand. His skin was pale and thin, stretched over a skull that seemed too large. When he spoke, his voice echoed in their minds. "Welcome, humans," Veln said. "The Council has been waiting for you." Do-hyun bowed his head slightly. "We are honored to be here." Veln did not return the gesture. He simply turned his floating chair and moved down the corridor. The Volari soldiers fell in around the humans, escorting them deeper into the station. Suman walked beside Do-hyun, her eyes taking in everything. The walls were covered with symbols from 100 different species. Screens displayed news from across the galaxy. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved through the corridors, most of them stopping to stare at the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to open disgust. "They don't like us," she whispered. "They fear us," Do-hyun replied quietly. "Fear always looks like hate." The grand chamber was enormous. Thousands of seats rose in a circle around a central platform, each section belonging to a different species. Holographic displays floated in the air, broadcasting the proceedings to billions of viewers across 10,000 worlds. This was the center of galactic civilization, and humanity was about to stand at its heart. The human delegation was led to the central platform. Above them, the council members looked down like judges in a court. Veln took his place at the highest seat, his ancient eyes fixed on the humans below. "We are here today to discuss the integration of humanity into galactic society," Veln announced. His voice filled the chamber. "Let the proceedings begin." For 3 hours, species after species spoke. Some supported humanity's inclusion. Most did not. They called humans violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. They pointed to human history, filled with wars and bloodshed. They showed videos of human soldiers fighting with brutal efficiency. Suman defended humanity as best she could. She spoke of human art, music, and compassion. She talked about how humans had helped other species, asking nothing in return. She reminded the Council that every species had violence in its past, but the Council was not listening. Their minds had been made up long before the humans arrived. During a brief pause, a small alien approached Suman. She was called Ambassador Tira, a member of a minor species that had no real power in the Council. Her body was covered in soft blue feathers, and her large eyes were filled with fear. "You must listen to me," Tira whispered urgently. "This is not what it seems. You are in danger." Suman felt her blood turn cold. "What do you mean?" "The Volari. They have convinced the Council that humans must be eliminated. This is not a negotiation. It is a trial. And the verdict has already been decided." Tira's small hands trembled. "They plan to kill you here, in front of the galaxy, a warning to any species that might side with humanity." Before Suman could respond, Tira hurried away, disappearing into the crowd. Suman immediately moved to Do-hyun's side. She whispered what she had learned, keeping her face calm and pleasant for the cameras that watched them. Do-hyun's expression did not change. "Are you certain?" "She was terrified, Captain." She was not lying. Do-hyun glanced around the chamber. Now he saw what he had missed before. The Volari soldiers were not just escorts. They were surrounding the platform, cutting off all exits. The Council members were not debating. They were waiting. The communications equipment in his pocket had stopped working, jammed by some invisible force. They were trapped. High Arbiter Veln raised his hand, and the chamber fell silent. "The Council has reached a decision," he announced. "After careful consideration of all evidence, we have determined that humanity represents an unacceptable threat to galactic peace." A massive holographic display appeared above the chamber, showing fabricated images of human weapons factories, invasion plans, and weapons that did not exist. "The human species is hereby sentenced to extermination," Veln declared. Beginning with these delegates, the Volari soldiers raised their weapons, hundreds of them, all pointing at 9 humans standing alone on the platform. The galaxy watched, expecting to see the first humans die. Suman felt her heart racing. Junho's hands tightened on his weapon. Minho stepped forward, placing himself between the aliens and the others. Do-hyun looked at his crew. These were his people, his pack, his family. He had trained with them, bled with them, trusted them with his life. And now, surrounded by enemies who expected them to beg for mercy, he saw something in their eyes that made him proud. They were not afraid. They were ready. Do-hyun turned to face the Council, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "You made a mistake," he said calmly. "You should have killed us in our sleep. You should have never let us see you coming." He looked at his crew and nodded. "They want to see what humans are? Show them." The lights in the grand chamber flickered. Lieutenant Yuna smiled. A cold and deadly smile that had no warmth in it at all, and the humans began to move. The Volari expected the humans to fall to their knees. They expected begging, crying, and surrender. For 10,000 years, every species faced with certain death had done exactly that. It was the natural response of prey when surrounded by predators. But humans were not prey. Lieutenant Kim Yuna moved first. Her body flowed like water as she closed the distance to the nearest Volari soldier. Before his finger could squeeze the trigger, she had twisted the weapon from his grip, broken his primary arm at the elbow, and fired 3 shots into the soldiers beside him. 4 enemies down in less than 3 seconds. The chamber erupted into chaos. Sergeant Choi Minho charged forward like a battering ram. His massive body crashed into the Volari formation, sending soldiers flying. He grabbed one alien by the throat and used him as a shield, while his other hand found a dropped weapon. The sound of plasma fire filled the air. Private Han Junho stayed close to Dr. Baek Suman, protecting her with his body while returning fire with precise shots. His training took over, his fear transforming into cold focus. Each breath was controlled. Each movement was efficient. Captain Park Do-hyun directed them with quick commands. Yuna, left flank. Minho, clear the path. Move toward the service exit. The council watched in frozen shock. High Arbiter Veln's ancient face twisted with confusion. This was not supposed to happen. These creatures were outnumbered 100 to 1. They should have died in the first seconds. Instead, they were fighting back with a ferocity that defied all logic. Observer Null, the council's official historian, recorded everything with trembling appendages. His species had documented 1,000,000 conflicts across 10,000 years. He had never seen anything like this. The humans moved as one. They did not need to speak to coordinate. When Yuna went left, Minho covered her right. When Junho fell back to reload, another human stepped forward to fill the gap. They flowed around each other like parts of a single machine. This was not trained behavior. This was instinct. Deep in human blood, burned into their genes by millions of years of evolution, was the knowledge of pack hunting. Their ancestors had worked together to bring down prey 10 times their size. That ancient programming now activated, turning 9 terrified diplomats into a coordinated killing force. Suman ran with the others, her heart pounding. She was a scientist, not a soldier. But she had received basic combat training like all humans who traveled beyond Earth. Her body remembered what to do, even when her mind screamed in fear. "Keep moving," Do-hyun shouted. They reached a service corridor and slipped inside just as a wave of plasma fire scorched the wall behind them. The door sealed shut, buying them precious seconds. "They're everywhere," Junho gasped, leaning against the wall. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. "Then we go where they aren't," Yuna replied. She was already scanning the corridor, looking for options. Maintenance tunnels. Ventilation systems. The areas they don't think to guard. Minho nodded. "We split up, we die. We stay together, we survive." "That's how it works." Suman pulled out her tablet. Against all odds, it still functioned. "I can access the station's systems. It's basic technology compared to our own. Give me 2 minutes." Do-hyun positioned the team to cover both ends of the corridor. "You have one." Her fingers flew across the screen. Lines of code scrolled past as she bypassed security protocols and accessed station schematics. "Got it. There's a maintenance network that runs through the entire station. It's designed for cleaning robots, but it's big enough for us." "And our ship?" Do-hyun asked. "Docking Bay 7. 3 levels down. About 2 kilometers from here." Suman looked up. "But Captain, the entire station is between us and the Resolve." "Then we go through them." Do-hyun's voice was flat. Not angry, not afraid, just certain. They found the access hatch and climbed into the maintenance tunnels. The space was cramped and dark, filled with pipes and cables. The humans moved in single file, their breathing loud in the confined space. Behind them, they could hear the Volari soldiers searching. Alien voices barked orders. Boots stomped on metal floors. The station had become a hunting ground, but the hunters did not realize they had become the hunted. In the Grand Chamber, Warlord Keth watched the chaos through multiple screens. He was the supreme commander of the Volari Dominion, a creature who had conquered dozens of worlds. His face was a mask of fury. "Find them," he ordered through the communication system. "Deploy every soldier on the station. I want those humans dead." High Arbiter Veln floated beside him. His ancient face twisted with something that might have been fear. "How are they still alive?" "There were only 9 of them." "They are humans," Keth replied, as if that explained everything. He had studied humanity for years, preparing for this day. He knew about their history, their wars, their capacity for violence. But seeing it in person was different from reading reports. The station's sensors tracked the humans for a while, then lost them in the maintenance tunnels. Keth sent 200 soldiers to sweep the area. An hour later, only 160 returned. The survivors told impossible stories. They spoke of humans appearing from shadows, striking without warning, then vanishing before anyone could react. They described a woman who moved too fast to see, a giant who shrugged off wounds that should have killed him, and a young man who seemed to know exactly where to shoot before his targets even moved. The bodies of the dead Volari told their own story. Some had been killed with weapons fire. Others had been killed with bare hands. A few had simply been found, with their necks broken, their expressions frozen in surprise. Keth studied the reports with growing unease. Humans were supposed to be soft. Their bodies were fragile. Their lifespans short. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no poison. By every measure, they should have been easy prey, but they were not dying. Instead, they were hunting his soldiers through the dark corridors of the station, picking them off, one by one. The galaxy watched it all. Noel's recording devices broadcast everything to 10,000 worlds. Species that had never paid attention to humanity now watched with fascination and horror as the primitive creatures tore through the Volari ranks. In the tunnels, the humans paused to rest. They had been moving for 4 hours without stopping. Junho's wound had been treated with a basic medical kit. Minho's shoulder was burned from a plasma graze, but he refused to slow down. How much further? Yuna asked. Suman checked her tablet. 1/2 kilometer. But the docking bay will be heavily guarded. Then we don't go in through the front door, Do-hyun said. He was looking at the schematics over Suman's shoulder. What's this? A cargo loading system? It connects to the external hull. They use it to move supplies directly onto ships. Can we access it from here? Suman studied the layout. Yes. But it will mean going through the engineering section. That's the heart of the station. It will be crawling with soldiers. Minho cracked his knuckles. Good. I was getting bored. Junho laughed weakly. It was the first time any of them had laughed since the nightmare began. But there was strength in that small sound. They were still alive. They were still together. Do-hyun looked at his crew, pride swelling in his chest. These were not the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They did not have ancient technology or supernatural abilities. They were just humans. Soft, fragile, short-lived humans. But they had something the galaxy had never seen before. They had each other, and they had millions of years of evolution that had turned them into the most persistent, adaptable predators their planet had ever produced. Move out, Do-hyun ordered. Stay close, stay quiet, and remember what we are. We are human. We don't stop. We don't give up. And we never, ever surrender. They disappeared into the darkness, leaving only silence behind. Somewhere in the station, Warlord Keth received another report. Another patrol had gone silent. Another group of soldiers had vanished into the dark. For the first time in his long life, Keth felt the cold touch of something unfamiliar. It took him several moments to recognize it. Fear. He was afraid of humans. 8 hours had passed since the humans escaped the Grand Chamber. 8 hours of running, fighting, and surviving against impossible odds. The station's internal sensors counted over 200 Volari soldiers dead or missing. The humans had lost none. The galaxy could not understand it. In the council chamber, representatives from 1,000 species watched the live feeds with a mixture of horror and fascination. They had gathered to witness an execution. Instead, they were watching something that challenged everything they believed about evolution and survival. High Arbiter Veln sat in his floating chair, his ancient mind struggling to process what he was seeing. How? He whispered to no one. How are they still alive? Observer Null, still recording everything for the historical archives, offered an answer. They hunt in packs, he said quietly. Like the predators on their home world. They work together, protect each other, sacrifice for each other. I have studied the records. No species in the galaxy fights like this. They are animals, Veln spat. Yes, Null agreed. The most dangerous kind. Deep in the station's maintenance tunnels, the humans moved like ghosts. They had learned the rhythms of the Volari patrols, memorized the blind spots in the security systems, and mapped routes through areas their enemies never thought to check. Captain Park Do-hyun led from the front, his senses alert for any sign of danger. Behind him came Lieutenant Kim Yuna, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. Sergeant Choi Minho brought up the rear, his massive frame filling the narrow tunnels. Between them moved Dr. Baek Suman and Private Han Junho, protected by the others. They paused at a junction where 3 tunnels met. Suman checked her tablet, the screen's glow casting shadows across her tired face. "The engineering section is 50 meters ahead," she whispered. "I'm reading 30 Volari life signs. Maybe more. Too many to fight through," Yuna said. "We could go around," Junho suggested. Minho shook his head. "Takes too long. Every minute we waste gives them more time to reinforce the docking bay." 2. Do-hyun considered their options. They were low on ammunition, running on no sleep, and operating on nothing but adrenaline and determination. A direct fight against 30 soldiers would be suicide. Then a small voice spoke from the shadows. "I can help you." Everyone spun toward the sound, weapons raised. Ambassador Tira stepped out from behind a cluster of pipes, her blue feathers dusty and disheveled. She held up her small hands in surrender. "Please," she said quickly, "I am not your enemy." Do-hyun lowered his weapon slightly but did not relax. "You're the one who warned us. Why are you here?" Tira's large eyes glistened with something that might have been tears. "Because I could not stand by and watch this happen. The council has become corrupt. The Volari have poisoned everything." She stepped closer. 10 years ago, human cargo ships saved my colony from a solar flare. You diverted your course, risked your lives, and asked nothing in return. My people would have died without you. Suman remembered that mission. The Tiran system. I read about it. The galaxy called your actions foolish, Tira continued. But my people called it salvation. We do not forget. She pulled a small device from her robes. This is a master access key. It will open any door on the station, disable any security system. I took it from Veln's personal chambers. Do-hyun studied the small alien carefully. Everything in his training screamed that this was a trap, but humans had another instinct, one that was just as old as their hunting abilities. They could read faces, sense emotions, detect lies. It was how their ancestors had survived in tribes, where trust meant life, and betrayal meant death. Tira was not lying. Her fear was real. Her gratitude was genuine. Why help us? Yuna asked. If they catch you, they will kill you. Then I die with honor. Tira replied simply. Something the council lost long ago. Do-hyun made his decision. Lead us around the engineering section. Help us reach our ship. After that, you come with us. Tira's eyes widened. You would take me? But my people will need you alive to tell them the truth. Do-hyun said. The galaxy needs to know what happened here. You will be our witness. For a moment, Tira could not speak. Then, she nodded. A fierce determination replacing her fear. Follow me. I know a way. She led them through corridors that had been abandoned for years, past forgotten storage rooms and sealed chambers that held the secrets of ancient civilizations. With her master key, doors opened silently, security systems went blind, and patrol routes mysteriously changed. The Volari hunted them, but they always arrived too late. The humans had already moved on, leaving nothing but empty shadows behind. In the Grand Chamber, Warlord Keth watched his soldiers fail again and again. His fury had burned away, replaced by something colder. He understood now what he was facing. They are not just running, he realized aloud. They are hurting us, leading us away from their ship while they take another route. He called up the station schematics and studied them with new eyes. Where would prey go if they wanted to escape? Not through the obvious routes. Not through the paths his soldiers were guarding. Somewhere else. Somewhere unexpected. The cargo loading systems, he said suddenly. They're going to exit through the hull and approach their ship from outside. He immediately ordered soldiers to the cargo bays. But deep in his heart, he knew he was too late. The humans had been planning this from the beginning. In the abandoned corridors, the humans finally stopped to rest. They had been moving for nearly 10 hours straight. Their bodies screamed for sleep, Their muscles burned with exhaustion, but they were close. So close. Junho slumped against a wall, his young face pale and drawn. The cut on his forehead had reopened, and blood trickled down his cheek. "How much further?" he asked. 200 meters, Suman replied. "We're almost there." Minho sat beside the young private, checking his wounds with surprisingly gentle hands. "You did good, kid. Kept your head when everything went to hell." Junho managed a weak smile. "I learned from the best." Yuna was cleaning her weapon, her movements automatic after years of practice. "When we get back to Earth, I'm going to sleep for a week. When we get back to Earth, you're buying drinks for the entire crew," Do-hyun said. "That's an order." Despite everything, they laughed. It was a tired, broken sound. But it was real. In that moment, surrounded by enemies in the depths of an alien station, they found strength in each other. They were not just soldiers, they were family. Tira watched them with amazement. She had seen many species face death. Most fell apart, turning on each other in desperation. But these humans grew stronger. Their bonds deepened, their determination hardened. "Your species is remarkable," she said quietly. Suman looked at her. "We're just trying to survive." "No." Tira shook her head. "You are doing more than that. You are protecting each other, fighting for each other, dying for each other." Her feathers rustled with emotion. "I have lived for 300 years. I have never seen anything like this." Do-hyun stood, his brief rest over. "Let's finish this. We didn't come all this way to die 200 meters from freedom." They gathered their equipment and prepared to move. The cargo bay was close. Their ship was waiting. All they had to do was survive a little longer. But when they reached the final corridor, they found their path blocked. 50 Volari soldiers stood in formation, their weapons ready. And behind them, wearing armor that gleamed like black ice, stood Warlord Keth himself. "Did you really think I would let you escape?" Keth's voice echoed through the corridor. "You have caused me great embarrassment, humans. My soldiers fear you now. They whisper about monsters in the dark." He stepped forward, his forearms spread wide. "But I know what you are. You are tired, wounded, and outnumbered. You have run out of tricks." He raised one arm, and his soldiers aimed their weapons. "Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. You have earned that much." At least, Do-hyun looked at his crew. Yuna was already calculating angles of attack. Minho stood ready to charge. Junho gripped his weapon with white-knuckled hands. Suman clutched her tablet like a weapon of her own. Tira trembled but did not flee. They were exhausted. They were wounded. They were absolutely outnumbered. But they were human. And humans had been hunting creatures bigger and stronger than themselves since the dawn of time. Do-hyun smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator that had been pushed too far. "You want our surrender?" he said. "Come and take it." The corridor exploded into violence. Warlord Keth expected the humans to charge blindly or scatter in panic. Instead, they did something far more terrifying. They attacked with perfect coordination, each human moving exactly where they needed to be without a single word of communication. Lieutenant Kim Yuna went low, sliding beneath the first volley of plasma fire. Her body twisted and flowed as she closed the distance to the nearest soldiers. The Volari wore powered armor that enhanced their strength tenfold, but armor meant nothing when she targeted the gaps, joints, necks, the thin space between helmet and chest plate. Her hands found these weak points with surgical precision. 3 soldiers fell before the others even realized she was among them. Sergeant Choi Minho charged straight into the center of the formation. Plasma bolts struck his body armor, burning through to the flesh beneath. He did not stop. Pain was just information. His body had enough adrenaline pumping through it to drop an elephant. His muscles screamed, but they obeyed. He grabbed a Volari soldier and lifted him completely off the ground. The alien weighed nearly 300 pounds with his armor. Minho used him as a battering ram, smashing through the formation like a force of nature. When the soldier stopped moving, Minho dropped the body and picked up his weapon, firing into the chaos. Private Han Junho had never been in real combat before this day. But his body knew what to do. Millions of years of evolution had programmed his reflexes, his instincts, his ability to read movement and predict danger. He moved through the firefight like he had done it 1,000 times. 3 plasma bolts hit him in the chest. The impact threw him backward, but his armor held. Barely. He could feel the heat against his skin, smell his own flesh beginning to burn. A human should have fallen. A human should have screamed in agony. Junho rolled to his feet and kept fighting. Dr. Baeksu-min was not a soldier. But she was human, and that meant she carried the same ancient programming as the others. When a Valari soldier broke through the line and charged toward her, she did not freeze. She sidestepped his attack, grabbed a fallen weapon, and fired directly into his face. Her hands shook afterward, but she kept moving. Ambassador Tira watched from behind a support column, her large eyes wide with disbelief. She had seen the galaxy's greatest warriors in action. She had watched the Valari conquer entire worlds. None of them fought like this. The humans did not fight with anger or fear. They fought with cold, calculated efficiency. Every movement served a purpose. Every action bought time or took a life. They protected each other with an instinct that went deeper than training. When Junho fell, Yuna was there to cover him. When Minho's weapon jammed, Dohyun tossed him a fresh one without breaking stride. When Suman stumbled, Junho caught her arm and pulled her to safety. They were not 9 individuals. They were a single organism with 9 bodies. Captain Park Do-hyun moved through the battle like a conductor leading an orchestra of violence. His voice cut through the chaos, directing his crew, adjusting their positions, exploiting every weakness in the enemy formation. He saw Warlord Keth standing at the back, watching with growing horror. Their eyes met across the carnage. Do-hyun smiled. Then he started walking toward the warlord. Soldiers tried to stop him. They fired weapons, swung blades, threw their bodies in his path. Do-hyun did not slow down. He killed them with whatever was in his hands. When his weapon ran dry, he used his fists. When his fists bled, he used his elbows, his knees, his forehead. A blade cut across his arm, deep enough to expose bone. He kept walking. A plasma bolt grazed his ribs, cauterizing flesh as it passed. He kept walking. Every species in the galaxy had a point where pain became too much, a threshold where the body refused to continue. Humans had that threshold too. But they also had something else. They had the ability to push past it, to override their own survival instincts with something stronger: will. The galaxy watched through Observer Null's broadcast, unable to look away. 10,000 worlds saw a wounded human walk through a wall of soldiers, like they were nothing more than obstacles to be cleared. In the Grand Chamber, High Arbiter Veln sat frozen. His ancient mind tried to categorize what he was seeing. Predator? Prey? Monster? None of the words fit. Humans were something new, something the galaxy had never faced before. Warlord Keth finally understood his mistake. He had studied humanity for years. He knew their history, their weapons, their tactics. But he had missed the most important thing. Humans were not dangerous because of their technology. They were dangerous because of what they were at their core. They were persistence predators. Their ancestors had hunted prey across continents, following them for days until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. They did not need to be stronger or faster. They just needed to keep going, and they never stopped. Keth raised his weapon and fired at Do-hyun. The bolt struck the human's shoulder, spinning him around. For a moment, it seemed like the human would finally fall. Then Do-hyun turned back. His face was a mask of blood and determination. His eyes held no fear, no pain, no doubt. Just cold, endless patience. "Is that all you have?" he asked. Keth fired again, and again. Each shot hit, each shot burned, each shot would have killed any other creature in the galaxy. Do-hyun kept coming. The Valari soldiers broke. They had been raised to believe they were the galaxy's greatest warriors. They had conquered dozens of worlds and crushed countless enemies. But they had never faced anything like this. They ran. The soldiers who had laughed at humanity's weakness, who had called them soft and primitive, turned and fled from a single bleeding human who refused to die. Keth was alone. Do-hyun reached him and stopped, swaying on his feet. Blood dripped from a dozen wounds. His left arm hung uselessly at his side. His breathing was ragged and wet, but he was standing, and Keth was backing away. In our ancient history, Do-hyun said, his voice barely above a whisper, we hunted creatures 5 times our size. We followed them until their hearts gave out. We do not surrender. We do not stop. He stepped closer, and Keth stumbled backward. What made you think you were more dangerous than a mammoth? Keth swung wildly with his powered gauntlets. The blow would have crushed any normal creature's skull. Do-hyun ducked beneath it, stepped inside the warlord's guard, and drove his knee into the gap between Keth's leg armor and hip plate. The joint crumpled. Keth fell to one knee. Do-hyun hit him again. And again. His broken fists found the weak points in the armor. His boots cracked plating that had never been breached. When Keth tried to rise, Do-hyun put him down again. The fight lasted less than a minute. When it ended, Warlord Keth lay on the ground. His armor dented and torn, his body broken, his pride destroyed. Do-hyun stood over him, barely able to stay upright. You should have read our history, he said. You would have known better. The corridor fell silent. The few remaining Volari soldiers had fled or surrendered. The humans gathered around their captain, their own wounds painting them in red. Sumin checked her tablet. The resolve is still there. We can make it. Yuna helped support Do-hyun, her own face pale from blood loss. Can you walk? I can crawl if I have to, Do-hyun replied. Let's go home. They moved toward the cargo bay, leaving destruction behind them. The galaxy watched them go. 10,000 worlds silent with shock. But as they reached the door to the cargo bay, the station's systems suddenly locked. Red lights flashed. Warning sirens wailed. Sumin checked her tablet with growing alarm. The station has initiated emergency lockdown. Someone overrode the system from the central command. Can you bypass it? Do-hyun asked. Not from here. I would need to be in the command center. They all understood what that meant. The command center was on the other side of the station. Someone would have to go back, fight through however many soldiers remained, and manually override the locks. Someone would have to stay behind. The humans looked at each other. After everything they had been through, this was how it ended. So close to freedom, so close to survival, and now someone had to die. The red emergency lights cast bloody shadows across the cargo bay. The humans stood in silence, each one understanding what had to happen. Someone had to stay behind. Someone had to die. Ambassador Tira stepped forward, her blue feathers trembling. I will go, she said. This is my station. I know the systems better than anyone, and my people need you to tell them the truth. Sergeant Choi Minho shook his head. No, your people need you alive. He looked at his wounded body, at the blood soaking through his armor, at his arm that could barely lift a weapon. I'm the most hurt. I'd slow you down trying to escape anyway. Minho, no, Lieutenant Kim Yuna said. We don't leave anyone behind. You're not leaving me. Minho's voice was gentle. I'm choosing to stay. There's a difference. Captain Park Do-hyun tried to argue, but he knew Minho was right. The sergeant was bleeding internally. Even if they reached the ship, even if they escaped, Minho probably would not survive the journey home. But here, he could do something that mattered. He could save his family. You stubborn fool, Do-hyun said, his voice cracking. Minho smiled. You trained me, Captain. This is what you made. Private Han Junho suddenly stepped beside Minho. I'm going with you. Everyone turned to stare at the young Marine. His face was pale, his chest wounds seeping through his bandages. but his eyes were clear and determined. "Junho, you can't," Dr. Baeksuman said. "You're too young. You have your whole life ahead of you." "Sergeant Minho trained me," Junho replied quietly. "He taught me what it means to be a soldier, to be a human." He looked at Minho with something like love. "I'm not letting him do this alone." Minho put his massive hand on Junho's shoulder. "Kid, don't argue," Junho said. "You know you can't do it by yourself. You can barely stand. You need someone to watch your back." He managed a small smile. "Besides, I still owe you for that time you saved my life during training. That was a simulation. Felt real to me." The argument continued for precious minutes, but Junho would not be moved. In the end, there was nothing anyone could say. The young private had made his choice, and humans did not force each other to live as cowards. Do-hyun finally nodded, his heart breaking. "You make sure the galaxy remembers what happened here. Make sure they know what humans are." Minho clasped arms with his captain one last time. "Tell my family I loved them. Tell them I died standing up. I'll tell them you saved us all, because you did." Yuna hugged Minho tightly, her usually cold face wet with tears. Suman kissed his cheek and whispered something no one else could hear. Tira bowed deeply, a gesture of respect her species reserved for heroes. Then Minho and Junho took weapons from the fallen Volari soldiers and walked back into the station. They did not look back. The galaxy watched through Observer Null's broadcast as 2 wounded humans disappeared into the red-lit corridors. 10,000 worlds held their breath. Minho and Junho moved quickly, using the last of their strength. They encountered resistance almost immediately. A squad of Volari soldiers had regrouped in the main corridor. Junho fired first, dropping 2 soldiers before they could react. Minho charged into the rest, his broken body moving on pure willpower. They fought through the corridors, leaving a trail of bodies behind them. Junho took another wound to his leg but kept moving. Minho's internal bleeding worsened with every blow, but he refused to fall. The command center was guarded by 20 soldiers. Minho and Junho had 6 plasma charges between them, and barely enough strength to stand. It was enough. Junho created a distraction, drawing fire while Minho flanked the guards. When the shooting stopped, every guard was dead, and both humans were still breathing. Barely. Suman's voice crackled through their communication devices. "The system is here. I'm sending you the override codes." Junho's hands shook as he entered the codes. The screen flashed green. Across the station, doors unlocked, security systems deactivated, and the path to freedom opened. "It's done," Junho said. "Get out of here." In the cargo bay, the remaining humans felt the station shudder as the lockdown lifted. Do-hyun did not hesitate. "Move! Now!" They ran for the resolve. Behind them, through the station's speakers, they could hear the sounds of fighting. Minho and Junho were buying them time, holding the command center against every soldier the Volari sent. The humans reached their ship just as the cargo bay doors began to close. Someone was trying to lock them in again. Yuna sprinted for the bridge while Suman sealed the airlock. "Engines online!" Yuna shouted. The resolve roared to life. It shot out of the cargo bay just as the doors slammed shut, missing the ship by inches. Behind them, Nexus Prime grew smaller. Inside, Minho and Junho were still fighting. The station's sensors broadcast their vital signs across the galaxy. 10,000 worlds watched as 2 human hearts continued beating against impossible odds. Minho fought on his knees when his legs finally gave out. Junho stood over him, firing until his weapon ran dry, then fighting with his hands. They held the command center for 17 more minutes. When the vital signs finally flatlined, a strange silence fell across the galaxy. Observer Null recorded the exact moment of their deaths, noting that their heart rates never spiked with fear, only with determination. The UES Resolve escaped into hyperspace, carrying 5 humans and 1 alien witness to safety. Dr. Suman's broadcast had already reached every corner of the galaxy, exposing the Volari's lies and the Council's corruption. In the Grand Chamber, High Arbiter Veln sat alone. His power was broken. Species were withdrawing from the council. Demands for justice filled every communication channel. The Volari Dominion faced condemnation from civilizations that had once feared them. Ambassador Tira addressed the galaxy from the safety of the Resolve. She told them what she had witnessed: the courage, the sacrifice, the unbreakable bonds between humans. They did not fight like animals, she said. They did not fight like monsters. They fought like family. They died for each other, and when we forced them to become hunters, they became the deadliest hunters the galaxy has ever seen. 1 year later, a memorial stood in Seoul, on Earth. Carved in stone were 2 names: Sergeant Choi Minho, Private Han Junho. Beneath their names, a simple phrase: they never stopped. Captain Park Do-hyun stood before the memorial, his arms still scarred but functional. Beside him stood the families of the fallen. They had been told everything. They knew their sons had died heroes. Lieutenant Kim Yuna, now promoted to captain of the Resolve, watched from nearby. Dr. Baek Suman stood beside her, finally at peace. Above Earth, 100 alien ships waited in orbit. But these were not invaders. They were petitioners. Species who had seen what humans did for each other and wanted that loyalty for themselves. Trade delegations, alliance proposals, requests for protection from the species that had once been dismissed as primitive. The galaxy had learned what humans truly were. Not weak, not soft, not prey. They were persistence predators who loved with the same intensity they killed. They were pack hunters who would walk through fire for their family. They were the species that hunted mammoths with sticks and refused to die despite everything the universe threw at them. Observer Knowles submitted his final report on the incident. When the council asked him to classify humanity, he wrote a single entry that would be taught in schools across 10,000 worlds for centuries to come. Classification: apex predator. Extreme caution advised. Do not threaten their pack. On Earth, Do-hyun placed flowers at the memorial. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere out there, among the stars, species were whispering about the humans. Some with fear, some with respect, some with hope. Yuna joined him, looking up at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. They used to think we were weak, Suman said quietly. Yuna shook her head. They thought we were prey. She looked at the memorial, at the names of the men who had died so they could live, and she felt pride swell in her chest. Pride for her species. Pride for what they were. They know better now. High above, the stars watched in silence. The universe was vast and cold and full of dangers. But humanity had proven something important. They had proven they belonged, and the galaxy would never forget it.